Hello and welcome to Sam Curtis Music, where today we are doing a tutorial on Avicii, and I'm sure you've heard of it before. It's You Make Me. This is the song. Yes, so what are we doing today? We are doing the lead for that part of the song. This is what it goes like. It is in F sharp major, or it is in D minor. It's D sharp minor or E flat, whichever one, take your pick. Or this is what I've come up with so far. Yes, so you understand what's happening here. It's obviously the lead. So one of the first things which I had to do, you go onto new sounds, you go and it changes everything for you. Adds a little bit of vibrato already down here, but I changed that to number 1, the envelope 1, just because I didn't want it to come in straight away. And if you listen to the actual song, there is a bit of vibrato at the end of when he's playing. So I wanted to add that in. So I did that to start off with. Added a very long delay, a bit of an attack just so it doesn't come in straight away. A very short decay as well, and no release. I also added onto the time number 3, envelope 3, which has got sort of a long attack, a little bit of a decay because I didn't want it to come in straight away. Sorry, delay, a little bit of an attack, a little bit of a decay, with the level about halfway, and a little bit of release. So that is all I wanted to really do on the vibrato. I also put up the depth just a little touch, just to make it a bit more stand out a bit more. So next I went on to voicing, just because I wanted to add it a little bit more. The max down from 16 down to 8, the unison down to 6, just because I wanted a more full sound. I also put it on mono rotate just because it's more, it gives a glide a bit more and whatever else. And I have the trigger on always, just so, see, because it's normally on polyphony. But if you have a mono, and then you change the timer. So if you put trigger in always, because I tried it on legato and it just didn't. It's just literally hitting the same at the time. Next I had pitch cutoff. So I put it on half just so it doesn't affect it as much, and I can also has a bit more control. Wavetable, I put it on just a little bit lower as well, lower than on the left. And then pan positioning, I put that on as well, just because it gives it a bit more of a thicker sound, a bit more wider as well. But I didn't want it too wide, so I put it quite close to the mono, but just under halfway. On oscillator 1, I have an additive mix 5. I have got it on spectrum, and also I got the wavetable all the way down, and intensity all the way up, and amp is pointing sort of, what's that, about 60 degrees. You can see what I'm saying. This gives it a sound of oscillator 2, I have got it on squelchy with a spectrum. This one will give the lower feel to it. So I got the wavetable all the way up, the intensity a bit further up, just on amp, and then the amp is just pointing up to the spectrum, just because I didn't want it too full, but I wanted it to give it a bit more low to it. And that's what Avicii's got as well. Oscillator 3, I've got it on a electric with it on +12, and it's on spectrum as well with the wavetable all the way up. I've got the intensity all the way up, but with the key tracking. So the key tracking is for when it goes up higher, that it won't sound as intense as when it's lower down. So this is what it sounds like with oscillator 1, oscillator 2 with a low, and oscillator 3 with a high. So now next we're going on to modulation oscillator. This one I've got ring mode on 1, the ring mode oscillator on 1, with it on a pitch +12 just to give it a bit more high. The RM is pointing over to the ring mod just to give it a bit more push. I got it on phase 2 with it pointing up to the middle, and then positioning is on 2 as well with it pointing up to the P, just because I didn't want it to have too much on the position and it sounded a bit awful, to be honest. So on, off, on, off, on. Next is the noise. There's a bit of noise underneath Avicii's original. I've got it on a bit of a velocity on the amp, with it not pointing too high, just a little bit up there, and the colour is all the way up, with it pointing over to the filter 2, just because I didn't want it to be affected by filter 1. So you can hardly hear it really. It just adds a bit of something towards it. Next I got the feedback, which is about a quarter of a way up, and it's got the same velocity as well. If you go to the routing, this is where the routing comes in. If I clicked it onto feedback 2, if it's got F2 over here, this will only affect filter 2, so it won't affect filter 1, even though it's going around again, but it'll affect filter 2. It's only going to affect filter 2. Next I've got it on insert, parabolic, shaper, parabolic, so I can't even say it properly, drive all the way up, and it's pointing up to the dry wet middle, and then I've got that just after filter 2. I've got on insert 1 just by there, and then the second one I've got it on a bit crusher, dry and wet all the way up and crush all the way up, and that is after filter 2 but before feedback, just to, it adds something to it. You'll see now. Bit of distortion. I was listening to the original, the Avicii's "You Make Me Lead," and it had I listened to it and it had a bit of reverb to it, so I added a small reverb just because I didn't want it too much. Put the size all the way up, density all the way up, color down a little bit just because I didn't want it too bright, and then I added envelope 3 to that just because I wanted it to sort of filter up when it's playing, and it fades off, you know, when it comes down again. So this is a reverb. Makes it a bit bigger as well, a bit wider. Next I've got a dimension expander, with it on dry, wet, size a bit down just because I don't want it too wide because it's filled up with everything else as well. And I wanted a bit of height on the EQ just to push it up more in sound wise. I brought envelope 4 down. It looks like this, bit of a delay on it. I've got a key tracking on the attack just so when it goes up it pulls it back a little bit, with the decay slightly down, levels you know, with the key tracking as well, don't worry about those. And release, I wanted a bit of release on it as well, with it on gate up there for yourself, The last thing I can think of for this is filter 1. I put it on Scream just to give it another bit more distortion to it, but it won't affect it too much. This is where filter 2 comes into play. I've got a very sort of shallow attack. Decay is very long, but I brought the level down just because it gives it the pop and then sort of brings it back down again of the dun dun. And then no release. I don't want to release with it on velocity controlled, just because I wanted it to be velocity controlled, if that makes sense. I've also got it on one shot. Like, I didn't want it to be on gate. I want it to be on one shot. So when it hits on one shot, when it hits every time, it'll change it to just that rather than gate. So this is what I've come to, lads, ladies. You can also add different things. Like I've got it on. I've got all the oscillators pointing to filter 1 just because they'll all go through it. With the feedback and white noise on filter 2. And I've got the filters in a series just so that they'll go and then straight through, if that makes sense. So it won't go that way, which is parallel. They won't go to each other. It'll go through the one and then through the other. That's why I got insert 1 by there. So this is what it sounds like with it all together. You ready? Now, as you can see at the end, it's sort of, there's a bit of reverb which brings it up and whatever else. So thanks very much for listening. I hope you like this. If you do like this, please give it a like and a cheeky little subscribe if you really like this. Leave a comment as well, just to see if it is the sound which you are looking for as well. I will also put a link in the description of the massive preset, just because you know what it's like. Instead of making it, you want to have it downloaded. But yeah,